So what we're going to do is we're going to create a quick login and so forth with database. So as you can see, I'm on localhost at the moment. I have no files there. I've got expression up. It's pointing at basically nothing there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating the database. So I click on the database tag, go in here, and I will call my database login stuff. Okay, so I'll create that. I'm going to go to the users tab. So this is inside the localhost PHP my admin. I'm going to click on add user. The user is ADB web. I'm on localhost. The password is password and password. I'm going to check all here and then I click on go. Okay, so that's the two parts that I needed. I need the database, which is here, and I also needed the user to actually access it. Now, inside the database, I'm going to collect information about my users. So I'm going to want a users table. And this guy is going to require 3 fields. Now, the first field is going to be the ID. This is a primary key. This is something you don't change, you want the system to change it. So this guy here is the primary key, and we also put a tick on the AI, which is auto increment. So in that respect, the system will automatically generate a number for this particular user. And we're collecting the username, which is a varchar. So a varchar is variable characters, which means it can take any character on the keyboard basically, and we also want their password. This is also going to be a varchar. Normally you would encrypt the passwords, but as we're just learning how to do this stuff, we can go with a plain text. So now I've got my users table and I've got information in there. So let's go to expression. Now from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new PHP file. This is going to be called index.php, like so. I'm going to double click it. So as you can see, this is now in HTML5. Now if I just quickly jump back to here and refresh the page, you'll see now that it comes up blank. That's now the system recognizing the fact that there's an actual web page there. So now the first thing I'm going to do, just to speed things up, is we're going to put some forms on here. Okay, so the first form I'm going to want is I'm going to want one for registering, and I'm going to want one for logging in. So to save time in typing up, here's a couple I prepared earlier. So this is going to point to a file called register.php, and this one's going to point to one called members.php. That's all they are. Nice simple forms. So if I save that, we refresh the page, you'll see there's my 2 forms coming up. Okay. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm now going to create the register PHP. So I will grab some information from another page that I've got off to the side, and we'll create the register one. So this guy here, we go new PHP, register.php, we'll open him up, and I'll paste on top of that. Now, let's take a look at this file. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm trying to reference this thing called functions.php. Now, we haven't made that one yet, but we will in a second. This is going to contain a PHP function called dblink, which will connect our web page to the database. This is going to basically give us a list of everything that gets posted from this form. So when you do that, you need to make sure that this name here matches this part here. Okay? So that collects the information out of post memory, stores it into a variable, then that variable we can feed here into a function that creates that account. Now, this then tells us whether or not it actually worked. And this little bit down here pretty much says that if it exists, then we just head back to the index page. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to create the functions file. So that's another PHP, so we have functions.php. Open him up. As this is a straight PHP file, I don't want any HTML there. And we'll start off with putting in a couple of different functions. Okay, so we have here, okay, so we have here, this is our DB link. So this tells the database that we're going to the local host, this is the password, the username, and the database that we just built. This links it all up. This bottom line here connects it to the actual database. Okay, so that's going to be, let's scroll back up here, this is the DB link one. The next section is the register account. So this is where we feed the information in. This is our MySQL. Okay, this is the command that makes things happen. So what we're doing here is we're saying insert into the users table, which is this guy here that we just created, the following information. Okay, so we've got the ID, the username, and the password. The value being null, because remember ID is auto-incrementing. This means it's going to count up by itself. So we're just concerned about getting this information into the system. This runs it. If it doesn't work, it'll die a horrible death. And this returns a value as to whether or not it worked. And of course here, as I said, this runs this part here. So let's just save all this now and have a quick look. So let's go back to our local host. I'll refresh the page. So let's start with Fred, with an awesome password of Fred. So I hit submit. So not for this site. Notice how it's come straight back here. Let's take a look at the database now. So what we do is we browse the database, and we have Fred and Fred going into this section. So this is a good start. Now we need to get the login part up and running. So to do that, we're going to create the members page. So this is this one here, members.php. I'm going to right click new, PHP, members.php. I'll grab the code from another page just to speed it up a little bit. And let's just look at this. Okay. So from here we have session start, which is something we'll talk about some other time. We have our functions, so this one here links to this functions page. Then we reconnect to the database. We collect the information here, which is this stuff here. Right, same username, same password. And then from here we run a function called validate user. Now if we validate this correctly, then this is going to come back and basically be a number that's greater than 0. So down here, what we do is we're going to check. So if the number is greater than 0, we can tell the end user they're logged in. If it didn't work, we tell them that it failed and they can have another go. Okay, so we need to add this function into the functions. So I'll just go grab that from here. Let's copy that and paste it into here. So let's have a quick look. So our function validate user collects the information that comes in. What we do here is we select star from user. So this basically means everything from the user's table. You wouldn't do this in a real world situation, mainly because you could have way too many results. But in this small case, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so what we do is we store stuff into an array. And then here what we do is we pull out the ID, the username, and the password from this particular field in here. So the ID, the username, and the password. Once that's pulled out, we compare the username in the database to the username that's entered. If it matches, we then check the password in the database compared to the password entered. If that works, then we can return some information. Otherwise, we return a null. If we return a null, then it means that pretty much we get down to here, and this is going to work on the fail section. If something happens and exists, it'll return a positive value. So let's save all that, and let's have a look. So we'll just refresh the page again. So here was our guy, Fred and Fred. So let's check to see if Fred works. So in the login, we're going to put Fred in with no password. So if I submit, fail to log in, try again. So it doesn't work without a password. You can put in Fred and Fred, we hit submit. Now we're classified as logged in. So that's a very simple way of actually getting database login up and running.